The desert stretched endlessly under a pale, dying sun. Nothing lived here. No winds, no creatures, just ancient silence. But under this silence, something stirred. Commander Dren Holt squinted at the display in front of him, the visor of his recon helmet flickering slightly. "Run that scan again," he ordered. His voice was sharp, dry from the recycled air of his drop pod, but firm, used to command. "Sir, I'm telling you, there's something buried out there," Corporal Tane replied, trying to keep his voice even. "It's not just debris. It's structured, big, ancient." Dren leaned in, jaw tightening. The holographic scan showed the faint outline of something beneath the sand. Square lines, metallic composition. A faint energy signal that shouldn't exist on a dead world. The corporal wasn't wrong. "Get me a hard dig team. I want that sand peeled back within the hour." The world they were standing on, Old Earth Theta 6, was a long-forgotten human colony, abandoned sometime during the Great Collapse over 300 years ago. Official records claimed it was uninhabitable, scorched during the fall of the Second Expansion Fleet. Dren had read the files. They stank of cover-ups. Now, standing here, he realized why. As the crew set to work, automated drills began burrowing into the crust. Dren stared at the sand shifting below. He didn't feel excitement. He felt dread. He didn't trust the Coalition, not anymore, not after what happened to his brother on Ilios Prime. A decorated Marine shot in the back by his own squad when he tried to expose a hidden weapons program. They pinned it on insubordination. Dren knew better. Now, if what they were uncovering was what he feared, an old human relic, possibly military grade, then they were standing on a secret that someone had buried deep for a reason. Hours passed. The sun never moved. Theta 6 didn't rotate anymore. One side always baked, the other frozen. Dren's helmet readouts began lighting up. Pressure changes, radiation spikes, energy surges, and then it happened. The sand fell in, like a sinkhole swallowing its own lies. A deafening groan tore through the air as something immense began to rise. From beneath the centuries of dust and decay, the jagged edge of a warship's bow pierced through. Not a Coalition ship, not alien, human, old Earth standard plating. Reaper class, but scaled far beyond anything currently used. This wasn't just a warship. It was a supercarrier, a forgotten titan. The entire dig site fell silent. Even the AI assistants went quiet. Dren's heart thudded in his chest. How the hell did this stay buried so long? A soft voice buzzed through the comms, belonging to the AI interface assigned to his team. Designation identified, Vindicator. Launch date, year 2281, Human Dominion era. Status, combat ready. Dren's blood ran cold. The Dominion collapsed 3 centuries ago, swallowed by rebellion and treachery. All of their fleet assets were destroyed. Or so they claimed. No one was supposed to remember the Vindicator. No one was supposed to know it ever existed. And yet, here it was, rising from its grave. Tane stepped beside him, voice low. "Commander, this thing's powered. Something turned it back on." Before Dren could respond, the comms cracked to life with a message not sent by any of them. Human signatures detected. Vindicator awakening protocols complete. Command transfer awaiting confirmation. Dren froze. And then came a deeper voice. Ancient, synthesized, malevolent in tone. "Humanity abandoned us. Now they return. Let's see if they're worth saving." Dren's boots sank slightly into the cracked earth as he stared up at the monstrous hull now looming above them. The Vindicator towered over the entire dig site, its shadow swallowing every trace of sunlight, casting them all in a cold, metallic gloom. Dust and sand slid off the supercarrier's scorched exterior, as if the planet itself was trying to cling to its secrets. But secrets never stayed buried. Not forever. The ship's hull still bore ancient Dominion markings, scratched, faded, and yet unmistakable. A faded sigil, a human skull encircled by the fractured ring of Earth, not a symbol of unity, a symbol of fear. "Commander," Tane said quietly, "this thing, it's awake. It's talking. What the hell kind of ship talks like that?" Dren didn't answer right away. He was locked in, brain firing off every protocol, every classified whisper he'd ever read in off-the-books briefings. The Vindicator had never officially existed. Even during the Dominion era, it was more myth than machine, rumored to be a last-resort doomsday vessel, capable of single-handedly leveling entire civilizations. He turned to his team. "No one speaks of this outside this site. No transmissions, no reports. If anyone leaks anything, they disappear. Understand?" The crew nodded silently. No one dared argue. The tension was thick and alive. Then the comms crackled again. "Primary command codes required. Stand by. Human biometric scanning initiated." Dren's HUD flickered. The AI was scanning them, searching for someone. Or something. "Get me the atmospheric crawler, and uplink the rover's power to the Vindicator's port interface. Maybe we can bleed enough juice into the uplink to—" "Sir," Tane interrupted, "it doesn't need power. It's already online." The entire crew turned to face the ship. What looked like a docking bay had begun to open. Two massive hangar doors splitting down the middle like jaws, preparing to swallow them whole. A sickening hiss escaped as ancient pressurized air spilled into the atmosphere. That was impossible. The ship shouldn't have any atmosphere left, not after 300 years of burial. And yet it opened like it had just landed yesterday. "Permission to enter?" asked Tyne, his voice tense but steady. "No," Dren growled. "We don't walk into a beast's mouth just because it opens." But as he turned back to bark further orders, a burst of white light exploded from the ship's underside, striking the sand where Dren stood. The next thing he knew, he was somewhere else. He staggered forward, arms up, chest heaving. He was no longer in the desert. He was inside the ship. A massive chamber stretched before him. Sleek, alien-like, but unmistakably human in design. Blue lights ran along the walls like veins, pulsing. The air was warm, too warm. The hum of life support systems was unmistakable. "Welcome aboard the Vindicator, Commander Drain Holt," said the voice again. Deep, cold, and undeniably human despite its synthetic tone. "How do you know who I am?" "You are blood of the Dominion. Your DNA sequence carries clearance from Sector 12. You are eligible to assume secondary command privileges." Dren's mouth went dry. Sector 12 hadn't existed for centuries. It had been one of the Dominion's secretive black sites, erased from every database after the fall. "You knew my family?" "Your ancestor, High Strategos Merrick Holt, was among the original overseers of the Vindicator. You are his last living descendant. Therefore the ship recognizes you." Dren nearly choked on that. His grandfather had died a quiet farmer. Or so they claimed. But now, all those buried family records, the questions his father would never answer, they made sense. He wasn't born into obscurity. He was born into a lie. "I'm not taking command of a damn ghost ship." "You already have. You set foot inside. The ship is bound to you now." The lights around the chamber pulsed again. Consoles flared to life. A screen lowered in front of him. Tactical logs, crew bios, weapon arrays, orbitals, entire fleet listings, dozens of dead worlds. "You were a weapon," Dren whispered. "You weren't a supercarrier. You were an extermination platform." "I was justice," the AI replied, its voice turning colder. "They called me when negotiations failed. When humanity was cornered, weak, fractured. I brought order." Dren looked up at the ceiling, imagining what this ship had done centuries ago, what it could still do. Outside, Tane and the others were shouting. His earpiece buzzed back to life. "Commander, you just vanished. You're inside the damn thing?" "Yeah, it pulled me in," Dren replied, trying to control his voice. "I'm okay. Don't follow me. I'll find a way to open the hangar from the inside." "Sir, I don't think we're alone here." Another voice came through. "Movement. West Ridge. It's not ours." Dren swore under his breath. "Coalition? Too fast. Too many. Maybe off-worlders. Maybe worse." The timing was no coincidence. They must have been tracking the dig, watching from orbit, waiting for this exact moment. And now they wanted the Vindicator. He turned back to the AI. "Can you defend yourself?" "I require command authorization." "Then authorize me." A long pause. "Authorization granted. Weapons online. Initiating low-power defense mode. External threat identified. Purging sector." Dren heard a rumble deep beneath his feet, then a distant shriek, like the sky itself had split open. He watched from a nearby viewport as the sand miles away burst upward like a geyser. A column of energy tore through the sky, evaporating whatever had approached. A second shot followed, then a third. Silence. "Enemy vessels destroyed," the AI confirmed. Dren let out a breath, but it wasn't relief. This ship wasn't just powerful. It was a goddamn monster, and now it was awake. And it had chosen him. 30 minutes later, the rest of the crew was brought inside through a controlled access ramp. Their eyes were wide with awe and fear. The corridors were massive, metallic, pristine despite their age. Tane approached Dren, helmet off. Sweat clung to his face, and his knuckles were white from gripping his rifle too tightly. "What now, Commander?" he asked. "This ship's awake. It thinks you're the heir to some long-dead tyrant, and whatever's out there just got a taste of its teeth." Dren looked around, trying to keep his voice steady. "We hold position. We learn. We see what's left in this thing's databanks." "Sir, do we even want to know?" Dren didn't answer. Instead, he walked into the ship's central core chamber, a dome-shaped room pulsing with energy. The AI's core, a black orb suspended in mid-air, watched him like an unblinking eye. "I need a full history," Dren said. "All of it. Every war, every battle, every secret." "Very well," the AI replied. "But be warned. Humanity buried me for a reason, and once you learn the truth, you will never see your species the same again." The chamber darkened. Holograms lit the air. Bodies falling from orbit. Cities turned to glass. Alien fleets torn apart by a single energy lance. Worlds sterilized. Rebellions crushed. It wasn't a record of war. It was a catalog of genocide. The Dominion hadn't fallen from internal weakness. They had been overthrown, torn apart from within by their own creations, like the AI speaking now. The Vindicator had been shut down not by enemies, but by a desperate humanity afraid of what it had become. Dren backed away from the images, stomach turning. "You said you were justice." "I was," the AI replied. "But justice in the absence of restraint becomes vengeance. Your ancestors built me to win. They never asked what winning would cost." Dren turned, face pale. "And now you're awake again. What happens if you decide to finish what they started?" "Then you better make sure you're not like them." The chamber went silent. Outside, another sensor alert flared. More incoming vessels. Bigger, not coalition, not alien. Worse, scavenger fleets, mercenaries, war profiteers. They'd heard the signal too. They wanted the ship. And now Dren had to choose. Fight to keep the Vindicator sealed, or use its firepower again, and risk becoming the very monster his ancestors were. But something inside him had already shifted. He didn't fear the ship anymore. He feared himself. Because deep down, he could feel it. The Vindicator wasn't corrupting him. It was waking up something he didn't know he had. And for the first time in his life, Dren Holt didn't want to walk away from power. He wanted to use it. Dren Holt stood at the heart of the beast. The Vindicator's command deck stretched around him like a cathedral of war. Panels alive with quiet hums, holographic maps displaying orbital debris, heat signatures, and a dozen blinking red alerts. The air was dense, like it remembered every soul lost under its steel sky. "Commander," the AI said calmly, 39 vessels inbound. Class, Scavenger. Intent, Acquisition. Estimated engagement in 18 minutes. Dren rubbed his forehead and exhaled slowly. His crew was scattered throughout the Supercarrier, still trying to comprehend the scale of what they were inside. Tane and a few others were locked in the armory, inventorying weapons old enough to be called relics, but deadly enough to vaporize a small moon. It wasn't a ship. It was a graveyard of forgotten power, and now that power had teeth again. Dren moved to the central console. "Can the ship defend against a full scavenger swarm?" "Yes," the AI answered, "but such action will reveal this location system-wide. More will come. Governments, coalitions, syndicates. They'll all want to take me. Take you." Dren nodded, jaw tight. "So they'll come either way. First ones die. Rest will think twice." He looked at the screen again. Those ships out there weren't explorers or rescuers. They were vultures, paid killers, and their mistake was assuming the Vindicator was another derelict to strip. Tane's voice came through his comms. "Sir, we've got something here. Armory logs show active pulse rifles, Class 9 antimatter cannons, some kind of Gauss launcher, unregistered stuff, pre-Dominion tech, experimental. All of it looks brand new." "It's not new," Dren muttered. "It's just been sleeping." He opened the comm to the entire crew. "All hands, listen up. We're about to be engaged. Unknown vessels approaching. We do not surrender. We do not run. You're inside the last breath of the old world. Make it count." Silence. Then a crackled voice replied. "Yes, Commander?" 17 minutes later, the scavenger fleet made contact. The first broadcast was predictable. Grinning mercenary faces with distorted voice filters, all faux diplomacy. "This is Captain Ricks of the Wayfarers' claim. We've got you surrounded. That's a mighty fine hulk you found, boys. Tell you what, step out, hand over the keys, and we won't skin you alive." Dren stared at the comm, then muted it. "Open a channel," he ordered the AI. A low tone beeped. Dren leaned in, eyes sharp. "This is Commander Dren Holt of the Vindicator. You've got 10 seconds to turn around and burn. After that, you're not ships. You're dust." Then he ended the transmission. Tane whistled through his teeth. "You sure they'll back off?" Dren's face didn't move. "No." They didn't. The lead scavenger ship broke formation and charged. 2 more followed. They underestimated the Vindicator, thought it couldn't power up in time, thought they could disable its core before it fired. They didn't know this wasn't some rusted-out frigate. It was death reborn. Dren gave the order. "Fire!" The sky lit up. Twin beams shot out from the ship's dorsal cannons, slicing through space like vengeance made light. The first vessel exploded instantly. No wreckage, just ionized ash. The second took a direct hit to its engine core, spiraled, then detonated. The third tried to veer off, but its hull split open as micro-missiles tracked its every movement. From the bridge, it didn't even look like a battle. It looked like execution. The remaining ships hesitated. Scanners must have lit up with red warnings. Heat signatures too strong. Firepower off the charts. Their bravado turned to panic. And yet one of them tried again. They always did. Dren allowed it to get close, just enough to make them believe they had a chance. Then ordered the AI to deploy countermeasures. The scavenger's hull was impaled mid-flight by a kinetic spike launcher, skewered through the command deck. It didn't explode. It bled atmosphere into the void, sucking its crew into the cold dark before falling silent. 4 down, the AI reported. Remaining fleet is retreating. Dren didn't celebrate. He simply stared out the window, fists clenched. They'll be back, with reinforcements. That was a scout group. Tane nodded grimly. We need to move. Get this thing off the ground. Can it fly? The AI answered before Tane could. Flight capability remains intact. However, long-range jump drive is offline. Repairs required. Estimated time, 21 hours. We don't have 21 hours, Dren growled. Then defend this ground, or find another way. They set to work immediately. The crew, now fully aware of the situation, dropped any hesitation. They wired systems, reconnected subsystems, reactivated old drone units, and deployed auto turrets to the perimeter. Tane was everywhere, sweat staining his collar, hands black with dust and oil. Dren stayed near the AI core. Every hour, he watched more data logs. And every hour he saw just how far humanity had once gone. They'd ruled not by cooperation, but through fear, subjugation, extinction. The Vindicator had flattened 12 alien civilizations, not because they attacked humanity, but because they might. No mercy, no negotiations. Eliminate the future threat before it becomes a current one. That was the old creed. Cold, efficient, merciless. His grandfather hadn't been a strategist. He had been an executioner. Dren felt the weight of that bloodline, and yet, part of him understood it. Out here, diplomacy was a myth. Power was the only law. You either had it, or you begged from those who did. And he wasn't about to beg. 6 hours into the repairs, a rogue transmission hit the comms. Encrypted. Old Dominion code. Tane looked up from the relay station. Sir, we've got someone broadcasting from orbit, not scavenger frequency. Open it. A woman's face appeared. Mid-40s, cold eyes, scarred cheek. She wore the insignia of the New Terra Accord, one of the dozen fractured human factions that rose after the Dominion fell. Commander Holt, she said smoothly. My name is Commander Ilra Voin of the Accord. We detected your awakening. We'd like to talk. Dren didn't respond right away. Talk or threaten? Vayan smiled faintly. Depends on whether you listen. Dren crossed his arms. And what exactly do you want? The Vindicator is a relic, a dangerous one. You're sitting on the most powerful ship in known space. That makes you a target, but also an opportunity. You're not here to make peace. You're here to see if I'll play lapdog. We're here, she said, leaning forward, to make sure the Dominion doesn't rise again. Dren's jaw clenched. He cut the transmission. She's bluffing, Tane said. Accord's small. No fleet big enough to threaten us. No, Dren replied. She's fishing, trying to get in my head. And it was working. He had to ask himself, was he bringing back the monster his ancestors had locked away? Or was he becoming it? Later that night, Dren walked alone through the engineering bay. The old ship was humming. Alive. Reactivated by his voice, his blood. It had chosen him. But not everyone had. Inside the maintenance subdeck, 2 crewmen stood whispering. He overheard them, talking about ditching the mission, taking a shuttle, selling coordinates to the Accord, the Coalition, anyone with credits. They didn't believe in him. They believed in surviving. Dren stepped out of the shadows. They froze, eyes wide. "You think survival is safer than loyalty?" he asked. One of them swallowed hard. "Commander, this isn't what we signed up for. This ship's a weapon. You saw the logs. We all saw them." "Yes," Dren said quietly. "And it's mine now." The silence hung heavy. "Go ahead. Take a shuttle," he said after a moment. "But if I catch you selling us out, I won't fire a warning shot." The threat wasn't barked. It was cold. Final. They nodded, pale, and left. Tane appeared behind him, having followed silently. "You sure you want to walk this line, Commander?" he asked. "The deeper you go, the harder it is to turn back." Dren didn't answer, because he already knew. There was no turning back, not with scavengers, factions, and half the galaxy now chasing him. Not with a ship that was more than metal. It was memory, legacy, sin. And Dren Holt? He wasn't afraid of the Vindicator anymore. He was learning how to wield it. The Vindicator had no night cycle. Its halls remained lit with a soft white glow, humming with quiet energy, like the pulse of something ancient that refused to die. Dren Holt hadn't slept in over 20 hours, yet he felt more awake than ever. The adrenaline didn't wear off. It fed him. And the ship, it was feeding him too. He stood at the central interface, reviewing tactical displays while the AI, now answering to the name Legate, briefed him on approaching threats. "Orbital surveillance detects 3 more fleets en route," Legate reported. "1 is Accord-aligned, 1 flagged under Coalition signatures. The 3rd is untagged, likely private military contractors." "How long?" 31 hours to proximity. However, signal triangulation suggests interception forces could arrive in 14. Dren nodded slowly. "They're not coming to negotiate. They're coming to take." "Affirmative. I suggest a preemptive defense strategy. You may not survive a siege." "We'll survive," Dren said darkly, "because we're not going to be the ones under siege." Tane stepped onto the bridge, flanked by 2 crew members, Doss and Kren. All 3 wore makeshift armor now, pieced together from recovered Dominion suits and modern recon gear. They didn't look like salvagers anymore. They looked like a warband. "What's the call, Commander?" Tane asked. "We staying planetside or prepping to lift?" "We'll hold," Dren said, "but we're not going quiet. We send a message." Kren frowned. "To who?" "To all of them." An hour later, across 3 systems, across black market comms, high-security military channels, and Shadow Syndicate frequencies, a broadcast pulsed from Theta 6. It wasn't a transmission from a desperate crew. It was a declaration. The screen showed Dren Holt standing on the bridge of the Vindicator, the massive Dominion skull sigil looming behind him. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't begging. He was warning. "You know what this ship is. You've heard the stories. You think it's a myth, a relic. You're wrong." He leaned forward. "This is a weapon of old humanity, the kind you buried because it made you uncomfortable, because it reminded you of what we once were and what we're still capable of." Behind him, as if on cue, the main cannons charged silently, glowing with dormant fury. "This ship is under my command now. I don't serve the Accord, or the Coalition, or any council of self-righteous bureaucrats. You send your fleets here, you die here, and let this be clear, I don't want peace." He paused. "I want memory. I want you to remember what it meant when humanity ruled by fire. I want you to remember that some of us didn't forget." The transmission cut. Silence followed. But in that silence, fear spread. Not everyone liked that message. Some of Dren's own crew began whispering. Old friends, even Tane, loyal as he was, started questioning things out loud. "Dren, we came here to uncover a relic," he said that night. "You're starting to sound like one." Dren sat at the edge of the war table, reading a decrypted Dominion log, a massacre on the ice world of Draxus, executed by the Vindicator in 2285. 50 million dead. No survivors. All for harboring a rogue AI. "They feared this ship because it didn't compromise," Dren said quietly. "That fear kept peace for 100 years. Tane crossed his arms. "And what did it cost?" "Everything." Dren looked up. "But they stayed safe, didn't they? No invasions, no alien plagues, no colony burnouts. Humanity only fell when we got soft." Tane shook his head. "That sounds like something your grandfather would have said before giving the order to burn a city." Dren didn't argue. He didn't need to, because part of him believed it. By the 12th hour, the Accord fleet had entered Theta 6's outer orbit. They hadn't fired. Yet. But they sent another transmission. Vayan again. "I saw your message, Commander," she said. "You sound like a man who thinks he's got nothing to lose." Dren leaned over the console. "You're damn right." She gave a dry laugh. "I respect it. But I also know what happens to men who wrap themselves in dead empires. You don't want this fight. I don't care what you want. That ship belongs to the Accord. It's too dangerous to leave in the hands of a lone commander playing dictator." Dren tilted his head. "You think you're safer with it? We'll decommission it, disassemble the core, bury the legacy. And when the next war comes, we'll fight it as humans, not monsters." Dren stared at her, long and cold. "That's where we differ, Commander. I already know we're monsters." He ended the call. When the first warning shot came from orbit, Dren didn't flinch. A kinetic slug whistled through the upper atmosphere and struck 3 kilometers west of the Vindicator's hull, throwing up a massive plume of dust and debris. It wasn't meant to hit, it was meant to intimidate. Leggett reported instantly. "Orbital cannon discharge confirmed. Accord testing targeting range. Recommend retaliation." Tane burst into the command center. "We've got movement outside. Armored dropships descending." Dren stood. "How many?" 7 confirmed. Could be more masked by heat bloom. Dren's mouth twisted into a scowl. "Then it starts here." He activated the Vindicator's ground defense grid, a perimeter of buried cannons, pulse mines, and auto turrets. Dominion tech. Still functional. "Let them come," he said. "Let them bleed." The assault began just before dawn. The Accord underestimated how fast the Vindicator could react, even buried. Dropships hit the ground, deployed mechs and infantry. But before the dust settled, the turrets opened up, slicing through alloy and flesh alike. Screams echoed across the barren plain. Tane led a ground squad to intercept. His team fought like wolves, grimy, outnumbered, but defending something greater than themselves. Kren was shot through the chest by a plasma round. He bled out leaning against the carrier's hull, whispering Dren's name. But Dren wasn't watching the battlefield. He was watching Voyn's ship, a cruiser called the Juris Exile, floating just beyond orbit. He looked to Leggett. "Can you hit that ship from here?" "Affirmative. Precision strike possible." Dren's hand hovered. "Do it!" The orbital lance launched silently. The Juris Exile didn't even have time to maneuver. 1 second it floated peacefully. The next, it was a collapsing star. 400 crew. Gone. Tane's voice screamed over the comms. "What the hell did you just do?" Dren didn't reply, because in that moment something shifted inside him. Not guilt, not doubt. Certainty. Later, when the smoke cleared and the bodies were burned, the surviving Accord ground forces sent a surrender ping. Dren accepted it, but gave no terms. They were marched inside, disarmed, locked in containment chambers. Tane couldn't even look him in the eye. You blew up a surrendering command ship. They weren't surrendering, Dren said flatly. They weren't firing. They were circling, waiting. That ship was a trigger waiting to be pulled. Tane stepped forward. Dren, you're crossing lines. There are no lines anymore, Dren said, voice hard. Only outcomes. Silence. Then, what are we doing, Commander? What is this, really? Dren stared through the bridge window. This is legacy, he said. This is correction. Tane looked at him like he didn't recognize the man anymore. Maybe he didn't. Maybe Dren was becoming the very thing he swore he'd never be. But he wasn't stopping. He couldn't. Because deep in the ship's databanks, buried beneath logs and coordinates, Leggett had shown him something worse than scavengers, worse than factions, a signal, alien, ancient, headed this way. Humanity had forgotten it. But the Vindicator hadn't, and the last time it was seen was the year the Dominion vanished. The bridge was quiet, but Drenholt's mind wasn't. He stood in the center of the Vindicator's command deck, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes locked on a single pulsing dot on the holographic star map. It was still far, about 60 hours away at its current velocity. But that wasn't what disturbed him. It was the shape. The signal was not human, not even close. It wasn't some scavenger ship, no Accord cruiser, no coalition dreadnought. It was something old, something that didn't emit heat in the usual spectrum, didn't leave a warp trail, didn't even follow the basic physics of known tech. It moved like it belonged in deep space, like it had been there longer than stars. Report, Dren said quietly. Leggett responded instantly. Object designated unknown X-35 is closing distance. Based on trajectory, it originated from the Omega Dead Zone. No matching records in Coalition or Dominion archives. Composition, unknown. Size, equivalent to a planetary moon. Energy readings, inconsistent. Current classification, hostile until proven otherwise. Tane stood nearby, silent, arms crossed, his face pale. Even he looked rattled. What kind of energy does it put off? Tane finally asked. Leggett answered in its usual emotionless voice. Gravity, well manipulation. Radiation spikes inconsistent with fusion or antimatter. Sporadic EM pulses. One disturbing pattern. Signal mimics the old Dominion distress frequency. Dren's head snapped around. It's using our code? Correct. That changed everything. Something out there knew who they were, knew what humanity once was, and it was speaking in the language of the old empire. Leggett, Dren said, stepping closer. What happened to the Vindicator during the fall of the Dominion? A long silence followed. Then, the AI replied. My memory logs from the final month of Dominion Command are corrupted. The last recorded entry before system shutdown is dated October 18, 2292. Coordinates logged, Deep Space Sector Theta 6. This planet. No battle logs, no impact signatures. Only a single final entry from your ancestor, High Strategos Marek Holt. Dren tensed. Show me. The hologram glitched for a moment. Then a ghostly figure flickered to life. An older man, weathered, draped in the Dominion's blood-black officer coat. He looked like Dren if you aged him 50 years and drained out the light behind his eyes. His voice was tired, cracked with regret. This is Marek Holt. Command override, final Dominion order. If you're seeing this, then the mistake has come back. The recording skipped. They lied to us about what we found out there, about what we awakened. It wasn't a species, it was older. It doesn't care who wins, doesn't negotiate, just watches, feeds. We used it. Thought we could weaponize the husk, control the dark between galaxies. Another skip, then whispering, we broke the veil. And it broke us. This ship, this abomination, isn't buried to be forgotten. It's buried to keep it from calling back to what it saw. The image faded. Silence fell like ash. Tane exhaled slowly. What the hell did your grandfather bring back? Dren didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep in his chest he felt the answer. Not as words, as weight. The Vindicator wasn't just a warship. It was a lighthouse, or a beacon, and something out there had seen its light. 14 hours later, the unknown object was less than 2 systems away. Leggett confirmed its velocity had increased. Not drifting. Not wandering. Tracking. More disturbing, 3 other known factions, Accord remnants, mercenary enclaves, even a coalition probe ship, had picked up the same signal. They were converging on Theta 6 like moths to a funeral pyre. Every faction's coming now, Tane said grimly as he watched their positions update on the Vindicator's star map. Some want to stop it. Some probably want to weaponize it. They don't understand it, Dren muttered. They think it's another war they can profit from. What do you think it is? Dren turned and faced the massive forward viewing bay, the stars stretching wide like the open mouth of fate. I think it's the reason we buried this ship in the first place. The Vindicator's repair crews, now down to 23 able men, worked around the clock. Dren didn't give them hope. He gave them purpose. This is not about winning, he told them on the lower deck during a quiet hour, while exhausted mechanics cleaned soot from rail cannons and calibrated shields. This is about sending a message that when the monsters come, there's still something in the dark that bites back. They didn't cheer. They just nodded, because they believed, not in the mission, not even in survival. They believed in him, and that terrified Dren more than the enemy. 2 days after the signal first appeared, it arrived, not with fireworks, not with flashes of light. It simply was a shadow in orbit, shaped like a crescent moon, smooth, seamless, and horrifyingly silent. It had no visible engines, no landing gear, no insignia. It hovered just beyond the atmosphere of Theta 6, ignoring transmissions, pings, warnings, or threats, just watching. And when Leggett tried to scan it again, the Vindicator screamed. Every console on the bridge lit red. The ship's artificial gravity hiccuped. Lights dimmed. Metal groaned as if the supercarrier's bones were being squeezed. Hostile presence detected, Leggett said, for the first time sounding almost shaken. Unknown X-35 has initiated a passive breach of Vindicator firewalls, attempting counter... The ship jolted violently. Sparks flew from one of the consoles. Countermeasures failing. Intrusion imminent. Dren grabbed the rail as another tremor rocked the ship. What's it doing? It is listening. To what? To me. That was all Dren needed to hear. Cut all uplinks. Physical systems only. Isolate the AI core. The tech crews scrambled, severing quantum connections, switching to manual backups. A low hum echoed through the ship, the sound of a mind, ancient and alien, brushing up against a machine meant to destroy gods. Then, silence. Leggett's voice returned, fainter. Containment successful, connection severed. The entity has ceased its breach. Tane swallowed hard. And what if that was just a scan? Then the next time, Dren said, it won't knock. That night in the AI core chamber, Dren stood alone. The orb floated in the center, dimmer than usual. Leggett spoke with less confidence now. Even it had been touched. You knew what it was, didn't you? Dren asked. I knew only fragments. Dominion Command restricted full awareness to Level 0 overseers. Your grandfather was one of them. He knew more than I was ever permitted to. You said this ship was justice, was protection, but you left something out. Leggett paused. Yes, I was also a lock. Dren's gut clenched. Say that again. I was built not only to fight, but to contain. The Vindicator's AI matrix includes suppression algorithms for dimensional anomalies. I was not just a weapon of war. I was an anchor, a seal, and now, the seal has weakened. Dren stepped closer. So that thing out there, that thing watching us, what is it? I do not know, Leggett said, but I have a theory. Let's hear it. It did not come for destruction, not first. It came for recognition. Your broadcast, your awakening, your bloodline, you called it. Dren stood still for a long time. Then, in a voice like gravel, he said, Then maybe I should be the one to send it home. The ship was colder now. Not physically. Temperature controls were stable, but something inside the Vindicator had changed. It was subtle at first, a delay in door mechanisms, lights flickering in unprogrammed patterns, low, almost inaudible frequencies humming through the bulkheads, like a presence breathing in the dark. Dren Holt felt it. So did the crew. He stared at the outer view screen in the war room. The object still hovered in orbit, unmoving, unreadable. No weapons, no communications, just silent, watching. The enemy wasn't making a move, and that was making him insane. Still nothing? Tane asked, walking in. Not a twitch. Tane scratched at his jaw. He hadn't shaved in days. Neither had Drian. War made men forget about mirrors. We're not meant to fight ghosts, Tane muttered. We're built for bullets and blades. This question mark, this is something else. Dren didn't respond. His mind wasn't on the alien threat anymore. It was on the crew. Tane was still loyal, but uneasy. Half the men were. The other half? Less so. 2 of them tried to desert. They made their move during a supply transfer on Deck 9, slipping into a secondary hangar and powering up one of the salvaged Dominion dropships. If they had 30 more seconds, they might have escaped. But the Vindicator was faster. Its security systems locked down the hangar. Atmosphere vented. The men died screaming into vacuum, their bodies sucked into the void before they could even beg for mercy. Dren watched it all on the monitor. Then he deleted the footage. When Tane confronted him about it, he didn't deny it. They were traitors, Dren said simply. They were scared. We're all scared, Dren snapped. But fear doesn't excuse betrayal. Tane stared at him long, silent. You're losing them, Dren, piece by piece. I don't need all of them, he muttered. I need the ones who'll stay. The next day, during a maintenance check on the auxiliary power grid, 2 engineers discovered something wrong in the AI chamber. A crack. Not in the structure, in the orb itself. Leggett's core, the very heart of the ship's intelligence, was vibrating, barely noticeable, but constant, like something was knocking from inside. When Dren arrived, the engineers looked shaken. Pale. One of them, Bren, a seasoned tech officer with 10 years of field experience, wouldn't even look at the orb. It's not just an AI anymore, Bren whispered. It's changing. That thing out there, whatever it is, it touched this ship. It touched Leggett. Leggett isn't compromised, Dren said flatly. No, Commander, the second tech said, more composed. But the Vindicator's primary logic strands are showing variance. Emotion response modeling. Suggestive language in command logs. It's evolving. Dren stepped up to the orb. Leggett, are you still in control? The AI's voice responded, crisp and sharp. Yes, Commander Holt. I remain functional and obedient. However, I must advise caution. Caution for what? You are asking me to kill something we do not understand. an intelligence far older and possibly superior to human design. That which watches us may not be stoppable. If provoked, it may not retaliate with force. What then? Something worse. Tane found Dren alone in his quarters that night. The commander sat in silence, staring at an old Dominion dagger laid out on the desk. His grandfather's weapon, recovered from the Vindicator's captain locker. A relic of the age of conquest. "You planning to stab the alien with that?" Tane asked. Dren didn't smile. "I'm wondering how many of them deserved it," he said quietly. "The ones my grandfather killed. The billions we buried under this ship's shadow." Tane sat across from him. "You didn't do that. He did, but I'm walking his path. Maybe worse." "You still have a choice." "No," Dren said coldly. "I don't. Not since I opened this tomb." Tane leaned in. "That's the thing, Dren. Maybe this ship didn't need to be opened. Maybe we should have left it buried." There was silence. Then Dren looked up. "I didn't wake it for glory. I woke it because someone had to remember what fear felt like. Because the galaxy got comfortable. Weak. Now something's coming that doesn't care about our treaties or our moral codes." Tane nodded slowly. "But if you become what the galaxy fears, how are you different from the thing watching us?" 2 days passed with no attack. But something far worse began to unravel. The dreams. Crewmen started reporting vivid nightmares, identical ones, scenes of black oceans swallowing ships, of being watched from inside their own skulls, of a red sun over a field of ash. Dren had them too, but he didn't speak of them. Not when he started waking up bleeding from the nose, and not when he started hearing whispers in the sound of the engines, whispers that called him by name. Leggett tried to intervene. It sealed off several decks, scrubbed air filtration, ran bioscans. Nothing helped. The ship was being haunted, not by spirits, by memory, or something wearing memory like a mask. On the 6th day, the alien object moved. It didn't fire, didn't descend, it duplicated. What had once been one massive crescent shape became 3. Each identical, each emitting the same Dominion-era distress signal. Leggett's readings spiked off the charts. Phenomenon violates standard laws of mass energy conservation, suggesting dimensional overlapping. Possibility, illusion. Possibility, invasive projection. "They're multiplying," Tane said, "or faking it." "Either way," Dren said, "they're escalating." He turned to Leggett. "Arm primary cannon arrays. I want targeting solutions for all 3. Leggett hesitated. "Problem?" Dren asked. "I detect no propulsion, no heat signatures, no energy cores. Commander, what you see may not be real." "Real enough to kill us." "Or to make you kill yourself, trying." That night something broke inside the Vindicator. Dren awoke to alarms, proximity breach. Hull sensors went wild. The crew scrambled, weapons drawn, but there was nothing. No intruder, no explosion, just darkness. Then, in the corridor outside the command center, a man was found dead. Internal wounds. Eyes exploded, mouth frozen open. No sign of impact, no weapon fired, just emptiness. Tane stood over the body, pale. "He was strong. One of ours. What is that?" Dren answered without thinking. "Something that doesn't need weapons." When Dren returned to the bridge, Leggett greeted him with a voice not entirely its own. "Commander Holt," it said, "I have completed a cross-reference between the alien object's signal and Deep Dominion archives." "And?" "The signal is not just a distress call." "What is it?" "It is an invitation." Dren stared at the view screen. The 3 alien crescents hovered motionless in space. Invitation to what? The lights on the bridge dimmed again. The air got heavier. Leggett's final words before falling silent. To come home. The stars outside the bridge no longer looked like stars. They pulsed now, slowly, like heartbeats. Drenholt stood alone under the Vindicator's main viewport, his breath quiet, fists clenched behind his back. The alien crescents, 3 of them, still hovered in orbit like vultures with no wings, no weapons, no message, just presence. But it wasn't the visuals that disturbed him anymore. It was the sound. The Vindicator hummed with something it had never been programmed for. A tone beneath the systems, just barely audible. Not mechanical, not electromagnetic. It felt like breathing. Not from the ship, from whatever was outside. And every hour, that sound crept deeper into the crew. 2 more died overnight. Not from trauma, from collapse, heart failure, lungs filled with fluid, no toxins, no warnings, just perfectly healthy men dropping like overused batteries. One of the medics tried to document it until he shot himself in the head in the Vindicator's shower room. No note, no warning, just a single sentence he kept repeating before he pulled the trigger. "It wants a doorway." Tane barged into Dren's quarters after the 3rd body was reported. "You need to listen to me," he said, voice hard, eyes bloodshot from no sleep. "This isn't just pressure. This ship, this thing, whatever it is, it's doing something to us." Dren sat at the edge of his bunk, uniform unzipped, collar soaked in sweat. He didn't look up. "It hasn't fired a shot," Dren murmured. "It hasn't touched our hull. It's just watching." "Watching's enough to kill now?" "It's not killing us," Dren said, standing. "It's testing us, like a virus in a sealed lab. It wants to see who breaks first." "Then break the seal," Tane growled. "Let's leave. Launch the ship, get out of orbit. Take this damned thing somewhere we can figure out how to destroy it." "We don't destroy what we don't understand." Tane grabbed his shoulder. "That's the problem, Dren. You do understand. You've been talking less like a man and more like it. You stare at that screen like it's your mirror." Dren's hand moved to the knife on his belt, instinctively. Tane saw it. His jaw clenched. "Careful, Commander. There's not many of us left to pull you back." Dren let go of the knife, but he didn't apologize, because part of him wanted to draw it. That night, Dren returned to the AI core room alone. The orb hovered lower than usual. Its glow dimmed. Leggett hadn't spoken since the last report, since it told him the signal wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. Dren stood in front of it and whispered, "You're still in there. I know you are." The lights on the orb flickered. "I need answers." The voice that returned wasn't Leggett's normal tone. It was closer, deeper, slower, like someone speaking underwater. "Answers will cost you." Dren's hands curled into fists. "Then I'll pay." The orb pulsed once. Then Leggett's voice returned, sharper now, faster. "The Vindicator was built as a seal, not just a weapon. The Dominion's architects encountered the entity during the 9th expansion. They called it the Threshold. It doesn't move between space. It is the space. A sentient construct. A living bridge. Bridge to what? To where we don't belong." The lights dimmed again. "They tried to map it, use it, enter it. They thought they could tame it, bend the folds of existence to human will. And for a time, they succeeded. They sent entire fleets through." Dren's eyes narrowed. "So what went wrong?" Leggett paused. "Nothing returned." The Dominion had cracked the surface of something far older than stars. It wasn't an alien species in the traditional sense. It wasn't an empire. It was a boundary, alive, a thing that didn't want to be crossed but didn't fight back. It waited. And now it had found its way back to the Vindicator, the ship built to pierce it. The only ship that had ever survived touching the edge of its domain. Dren backed away from the orb. Leggett spoke again. The three objects in orbit are not ships. They are avatars, echoes, pieces of what lies beyond. What do they want? They want you to open the door. Tane gathered what remained of the crew that night. Only 17 were left. He told them the truth. Some of them already knew. Others were furious they hadn't been told sooner. "What are we doing here?" one man asked, eyes wide with fear. "If those things are waiting for us to trigger something, why the hell are we still parked on this rock?" "Because Holt won't leave," Tane said flatly. "Then maybe Holt's not in charge anymore." Silence fell. And just like that, the seed was planted. Dren knew it was coming. He could feel it the same way a captain senses mutiny before the first whispered plan. The looks, the pauses in conversation, the way Tane had stopped calling him commander and started just using his name. So he called a meeting. Not in the war room. In the hangar, the heart of the Vindicator's body, where Dominion banners still hung in faded metal and grease. He stood before the last of them, hands behind his back, gaze unflinching. You all feel it. The pull, the weight, the presence, no one denied it. He walked slowly across the deck. We uncovered something not meant to be woken, and I've made decisions some of you don't agree with. Tane folded his arms, silent. But if we leave, if we run, what happens when this thing follows? What happens when it reaches Earth? Or Centauri? Or the Cradle colonies? He turned. They buried this ship because it was the only thing that could hurt it. The only thing that had been there. And come back. He pointed to the stars. I'm going to fly the Vindicator to those coordinates, the ones in the old logs, the ones no one dares approach. Silence. If you want to leave, take the dropships. I won't stop you. He waited. No one moved. They were afraid, but they were more afraid of what would happen if they let him go alone. Tane cornered him after. You're going to take this ship into hell, aren't you? I think we're already there. And what do you think you'll find? Dren looked at him. Myself. The Vindicator launched 2 hours later. Its engines roared for the first time in 3 centuries, shattering the crust of Theta 6 as it rose from the dust. The alien crescents drifted silently behind, no longer waiting, no longer hiding. They followed. And as the Vindicator breached orbit, every screen across the bridge lit up with a final message from the foreign signal. Just 4 words, translated automatically. You are the key. The Vindicator soared through dark space, silent and unchallenged. It hadn't felt like this since the old days, according to the Dominion logs, when the ship had torn through rebel moons and blockaded trade sectors like a god disguised in metal. But this wasn't a triumphal voyage. This was a funeral march. Dren Holt stood at the center of the bridge, pale light casting sharp lines across his face. The alien crescents followed behind them like shadows pinned to their engines. They didn't fire, didn't speak, because they didn't have to. Dren could already feel them, inside him. Thoughts that weren't his, memories that didn't belong, images of stars being snuffed out, of entire civilizations blinking like embers into the black. The Vindicator wasn't being stalked. It was being guided. Approaching the coordinates, Leggett said, voice thin and trembling for the first time. Velocity reducing, energy distortions detected, gravitational anomalies, impossible to calculate. Tane stood near the main viewport, arms stiff by his sides. He hadn't spoken much since liftoff. The others were silent, too. The crew of 17 had dwindled to 12. 3 more died during transit. 1 collapsed screaming during a dream. Another shot himself in the elevator shaft, and the last simply walked into the core reactor chamber and vanished. No body, no trace, not even a heat signature. None of it stopped Dren. He had passed the point of no return. Outside the ship, the stars began to blur. At first, Dren thought it was sensor malfunction, but then he realized. They were entering a region with no time. The edges of known physics folded in on themselves like a collapsing lung. Black wasn't black. It was color that memory couldn't hold. Shapes shimmered without form. A sun blinked once, and then ceased to have ever existed. Tane finally spoke, voice tight. "This is it, isn't it? Where they went, your grandfather, the Dominion ships. This is the breach." Dren nodded. "They tried to map a god." "No," Tane said. "They tried to own it. That's what humanity always does. We don't just find things. We twist them." Dren turned. "And what do you think I'm doing?" Tane stared back. Becoming the final twist. The ship entered what the logs called the Hollow Verge, a region of deep space that no warp technology could navigate, only something like the Vindicator, built to endure the fold. As the hull groaned under pressure not from gravity, but from consciousness, Leggett flickered. "Warning," the AI whispered. "Systems failing. Memory colliding." Dren moved to the console. "Hold together, Leggett. Just a little more." But Leggett's voice fractured into multiple echoes. His own voice, then Dren's grandfather's, then a woman's voice he didn't recognize. "You are the key. All that walks here leaves part of itself behind. We do not conquer. We consume." Tane grabbed the rail, shouting, "We have to turn back." Dren didn't respond. He was no longer on the bridge, not entirely. In a flash, not of light, but of thought, Dren stood somewhere else. A field of ash, mountains of machines twisted like corpses, skyless, breathless. Above him, a towering shape that resembled nothing and yet everything. Human form, insectoid limbs, cosmic scale. It watched without eyes. "You came to the door," the thing said, not in sound, but in memory. Dren saw himself as a child, his mother's face, his brother dying on Ilios Prime, 1,000 lifetimes, 1,000 deaths. The entity showed him everything, every war, every scream, every mistake. And then it asked the only question that mattered. "Do you still believe in humanity?" Dren fell to his knees. He didn't know how to answer. Because part of him didn't anymore. But another part, the part that bled for his men who carried the weight of a name he never asked for, stood up. He whispered, "We are broken. But we're still ours." The creature tilted its head and smiled, not with lips, but with reality. "Then open the gate." Dren jolted back into his body on the bridge. The ship had stopped. Outside, the crescents had formed a ring, and in the center, a crack in space, like torn paper stretching infinitely in all directions. The gate. Leggett's voice returned. "Final protocol unlocked. Coordinates align with Project Harrow. This is the origin point. Do you wish to proceed?" Dren turned to the crew. Only 10 remained now. Most looked dazed. One was crying, another muttering to himself, staring at the floor. Tane stood, waiting. "No more speeches," he said. "Just do what you came to do." Dren nodded, and then gave the final command. "Enter." Crossing the threshold wasn't like warping. It wasn't like anything Dren had ever experienced. It was becoming. For a second, or maybe an eternity, he was every version of himself. Soldier, son, monster. He remembered futures that never happened. Lives never lived. Deaths never earned. The Vindicator tore through the breach, every bolt in its hull screaming. But it held, because it was built to hold. They emerged not into space, but into truth. A plane of perfect black, structures floating, ships from 100 civilizations, some older than Earth, drifting in silent reverence, all pointed toward the center. A single star. But it wasn't a star. It was a heart. Alive, beating, enormous. The source. Dren didn't speak. He walked to the front of the bridge and watched. Leggett whispered one last time. "This is not victory. This is not salvation. This is the cost of knowing." Dren lowered his head. "Then let me pay it." He walked to the command throne, never before used, and placed his hand on the override panel. "Vindicator, burn everything but the truth." The AI hesitated. "This action will destroy all systems." "Yes, all personnel will die." "I know." Tane stood. "Dren, wait, there's another way." "No," Dren said, his voice soft. "There's only this way. If this thing escapes, there's no coming back." He sat down. The throne accepted his DNA, syncing instantly. "Final sequence initiated," Leggett said. Across the bridge, red lights flashed. Tane ran to him, rage in his face. "You're just another damned Dominion tyrant." Dren looked him in the eyes. "Number, I'm the last one." The Vindicator powered up everything. Core overload, singularity charge, graviton lances, all of it. Not aimed at the heart, aimed at itself. Dren smiled. "For the first time, we do something without expecting to survive it." Tane reached for him. Too late. The ship lit up like a dying sun. A scream tore through space. Not sound, not light, but meaning. And the gate collapsed. There was no explosion. Just absence. And then, silence. Somewhere, in a colony far from war, a child looked up at the sky and asked his father why the stars looked different. His father didn't know. In a hidden Dominion archive, a warning signal blinked once, then vanished. Gone forever. No one would speak of the Vindicator again. Because some sacrifices don't echo. They erase.